My name is Tamara Staten, and you have come to the CCL Media Basics party this evening with Core Volunteer Training. Core Volunteer Training is a program of the Citizens Climate Lobby. It's especially created for new and newer volunteers to help them connect with each other around your larger goals, around climate advocacy. So, as I said, this week's topic is media basics. Thank you so much for joining us. So we have 3 learning goals tonight. Number 1, to clarify the role of media itself and what media managers are in CCL. We're going to also review the 4 main ways that we recommend engaging with the media, and we hope that you will walk away with an understanding of how CCL staff supports your local media work. So we'll start out with this evening by diving into the role of media and the media manager. We'll follow that up with an overview of media opportunities and available media resources from the CCL staff. And then we will provide some interactive time, like I said, for practice, where we will be putting people in breakout rooms of 3s. And like I said, that will happen towards the end, perhaps shortly after 1/2 past. And that's about it. So Steve, it's all you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tamara, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being here for the media training tonight. And so let's talk a little bit about the role of the media. What does local media do that the national media doesn't do? So national media, like the New York Times, CNN, NPR, generally influence public opinion in a broad way. Local media, like your city newspaper and local TV stations, are more directly influential on members of Congress. They need support from these outlets for their reelection campaigns, and local coverage helps them keep their finger on the pulse of their district or state. So one way we move the needle is by working to shape the narrative in those local outlets, which members of Congress and their staffers pay close attention to. So while it's tempting to want to focus your energy on the national level, now that we have a bill in Congress and things are kind of heating up with climate legislation, it's really important to keep moving the conversation forward in our local media markets. Talk a little bit about the media manager role. And so anyone who wants to help out with media activities in their chapter can be designated as a media manager. So if you're a media manager, all that it basically entails is that you receive media materials and opportunities, usually once a month, maybe once, maybe a little more, via email. We have a new staffer who just came on a few weeks ago. Her name is Charlotte Ward, and she is the CCL's state and local media coordinator. So she'll be the one who will be sending out these media emails about opportunities and materials, and also occasionally send training tips and provide some extra support. So if you want to be added as a media manager, a couple of ways you can do that. You can reach out and you can, and we'll add you. You can ask Charlotte, if she'll designate you as a media manager, and that's her address there, charlotte.ward@citizensclimatelobby.org. Or you could send an email to me. My email's even simpler. It's steve@citizensclimate.org. Or you can ask your group leader to designate you as a media manager, and they can go into the chapter roster on CCL Community and click the little box there that'll designate you as somebody to receive media materials. And if you look at the community, this is what the on the next slide here. This is what the group leader sees in the roster. They basically would just call up your name, and there's a thing, the little box there that says media manager. All they do is just click that, and boom, you're on the list. So we're going to give an overview here of the various media opportunities that are available out there. So for us, it's usually letters to the editor, op-eds, editorial endorsements, and news coverage. And if your chapter is big, you might already be doing a lot of these things. If your chapter is small, you might be feeling like you're not sure where to start or don't even know what all those options are. So let's take a look at those options. So first one, and probably the most easy thing to do, is a letter to the editor, unless you're trying to get a letter to the editor in the New York Times. That's a little harder. But here's an example from Clara Fang. She wrote a letter to the editor back in January because we had a new president who just came in, and so that we're off to a fresh start, and there was an opportunity to get something done, and so she wrote a letter to the New York Times, and it got published. So then after letters to the editor, another way that you can get published is an op-ed. Now, an op-ed it's an opinion piece. You can kind of look at an op-ed as sort of being like a long letter to the editor. It's the same concept, except you have a little bit more room to kind of make your case and put some more details in it. So this example on the right here is something that actually just got published this week in the Clara. It was in the Santa Clarita Valley Signal, and this op-ed was actually done from a template that we provided to our volunteers. I'll explain all about that a little bit later when we get into the resources. But this is kind of playing off of the news that's been out there lately about the extreme weather, the fires, the floods, and all of that stuff. We had an op-ed template that talked about that and about the need to put a price on carbon. So after op-eds, another way that we can exert our influence is with editorial endorsements. And so an editorial, of course, it's the official view of the newspaper. And what we're really aiming at right now, up until probably a few months ago, we were looking for endorsements for the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Now we're trying to get carbon pricing into the legislation that's going to be considered this year. And so that's what we're aiming for in these endorsements, is for newspapers to come out in favor of putting a price on carbon in with the solutions that are going to be moving through Congress this year. And then over on the right here, we have an example of an editorial endorsement that was in the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That was down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the headline on it really kind of says it all. It was a great editorial. It said, "Bill to curb climate crisis would impose fee on greenhouse gases. Citizens get monthly check. What's not to like?" And one other thing I'll say about the editorial endorsements, and the reason that these things are so special, they're kind of like the brass ring that we're always grabbing for, because members of Congress, whenever they're up for re-election, one of the first stops they make is the editorial board for their local newspaper in their district, and they're seeking the endorsement of that newspaper for their re-election. So if they see that the newspaper has endorsed a particular policy, a little light goes on in their head. Gee, maybe I need to take a look at this policy and perhaps even support it if I want to get the newspaper's endorsement. So that's why that's so valuable. So then lastly, the other opportunity that we have is news coverage. Now, the other three things we talked about were things that appear on the opinion pages, on the editorial page or the op-ed page or something like that. News coverage is a little different. It's happens in the news pages of the newspaper, and this is directed more at reporters not opinion editors. So these are stories that reporters might write about Citizens Club, Climate Lobby, and our work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a newspaper. It can be on TV or it can be on radio as well. A little example over there on the right is from the Press Republican in Plattsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was a story about the city of Plattsburgh endorsing the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And when we get to the resources, you'll learn a little bit more about how that happened. So let's talk a little bit about the resources that we have from CCL National. These would be templates, information packets, and that sort of thing. We're going to walk through these resources and make sure you know what National is providing for you and where you can find them. So if you go to the resources page on CCL Community, you'll see a whole bunch of different topics for resources, and one of those is media relations. And if you click the media relations link there, you'll see a drop-down menu that shows you all of the different resources that we have available for you to help generate media in your local outlets. So let's talk a little bit then first off about letter to the editor opportunities. So what CCL National provides is it's a document called LTE Topics, and occasionally you'll see letter to the editor opportunities in the monthly action sheet, but normally if you're looking for ideas about what to write letters to the editor about, go to the LTE Topics, and in the LTE Topics, you'll get some really good ideas. And again, the place to find the LTE Topics is on the resource page on Community, or in the monthly action sheet. So here you can see with the red arrow pointing to it, if you go to the resources page and you click media relations, there's the link for the letters to the editor topics. That's where you'll find it on CCL Community. And once you open up the LTE topic ideas, there are a number of different categories. It's a great document. It's a great resource for getting you going. So the very first thing that you'll see is topics that are currently in the national news. And so this is important, because when you write letters to the editor, you're responding to things that are in the newspaper. And if there are things that are in the newspaper, it means that it's news. It's things that are happening now, current events. And so the LTE Topics will give you a rundown of, here are the big stories out there nationally that a lot of newspapers are running with. And so these are things that present what we call a letter to the editor opportunity. So also in the LTE Topics document, you'll find some stuff about Citizens Climate Lobby's virtual climate conference, like the one we just had back June, and the one that we're going to have again coming up in November. There's also topics about CCL's preferred climate policies, which is carbon fee and dividend. And there's also topics about bipartisanship, and there's also some helpful statistics that you can reference in your letters to the editor. Whenever you include facts and figures in a letter, the editors love that. It's kind of like, oh, this guy just isn't pulling stuff out of his hat. He actually has some facts to back up what he's saying. So we have some of that also in the LTE topic ideas. So a little bit about op-eds. So what we provide, what National provides for op-eds are they're time-sensitive pieces that are written by the CCL staff, and usually the author on that op-ed will be Mark Reynolds, the executive director of Citizens Climate Lobby. But these templates will also often include places where you can insert local information into the op-ed. And then if you put that information in there, you can add your name to the op-ed. So it'll have a double byline. It'll have Mark and you. And these local details can be things like the impact of climate change in your area, whether or not your member of Congress was a co-sponsor on a carbon pricing bill. So you add this information in there, you add your name to it, and you can submit it to the local newspaper. And what's good about that is that the local paper, they always want something that has the local angle in it, and they like to have pieces that are locally written. So by adding your name to it, it kind of improves the chances that the newspaper will pick it up. And so these op-ed templates, again, they're found on they're a resource that's found on community on the resource page under media relations. Yeah, if you just go to the resource page, and you'll see on the next slide here where the arrow is pointing down. Boom! There's the op-ed templates. You can click that, and then once you've clicked the op-ed templates link, it'll take you to the templates page, and you'll see there are a number of different options that you can download. This one's from a couple of years ago, so we have stuff that's a little fresher than what's on the slide here right now. But as a matter of fact, we have that op-ed that ran in Santa Clarita. That's up on the op-ed templates page right now, as a matter of fact. So so that's the place where you can find op-eds, and like I say, you can add your stuff to it and submit it to your local paper, and boom, you've got a 600 to 800 word piece with a nice big headline that's running in your newspaper. So then the next resource that we offer is editorial packets. And as I was saying before, the editorials are really valuable in terms of influencing members of Congress. And so we provide a couple of options with the editorial packets, and the editorial packet, it's not a piece that it's not like an op-ed where you would send it to an editor and they would run the editorial packet as an op-ed or something like that. The purpose of the editorial packet is to help you pitch the editorial board of the newspaper to write an endorsement for the policy. And so what the packet is all about is to provide some information to the editorial page editor, or to the editor, or to the whole editorial board about our issue. And if they're thinking, yes, I would like to write an editorial endorsing carbon pricing as a solution that needs to be included in climate legislation, the editorial packet will give them the information that they need to write an editorial. As I said, we have a couple of options. Sometimes you have one editorial packet that will be timely. In other words, it will look at what's happening in the news right now, and put our policy in the context of what is happening at the moment. So we might have an editorial packet in there right now that talks about all of the huge impacts that are happening with climate change, the wildfires, the floods, the droughts, and all of that stuff. That particular editorial packet, as I say, kind of plays off of what's happening in the news, and then goes into, okay, all of these things are happening. We have to cut carbon emissions. Here's how we can do that. And then the other type of editorial packet that we have is what you might call kind of an evergreen packet that is just solely focused on the policy, on carbon fee and dividend, on the, whatever legislation is has been introduced in Congress right now. In the House, we have the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, and the Senate, there's the Save Our Future Act. So two kinds of packets. One is kind of timely, that plays off of the news, and the other packet is as I say, good anytime. It's an evergreen packet that just talks about the policy and the need to have that policy included in climate legislation. So if you're looking for the editorial packets, again, that's on the media resources page. You go to the resources page on CCL Community, click Relations, and there's the link to the editorial packets. And then once you get there, as I said, there's usually several options for different types of editorial packets that depending on what kind of pitch you want to make to the editorial board. And you can see on the left there, that's kind of like the first page of an editorial packet. The packets are usually about 4, sometimes 5 pages long or something like that. As I said, it's a resource that provides information for the editors on the editorial board, so that they have the information that they need if they decide to write an editorial about carbon pricing or about carbon pricing legislation. So then the last resource that we provide is the press release template. And remember a little while back when we were looking at, we saw that article that was in one of the Pennsylvania newspapers about a city that had endorsed the Energy Innovation Act. Well, the reason that story was probably written was because the CCL chapter in that city, well, first of all, they got the endorsement, from their city council for the Energy Innovation Act. But then after that city council passed that resolution to endorse the policy, the local chapter downloaded a press release template, as I say, the template is just what it sounds like. It's kind of a boilerplate language, for a press release that you might send out. And we have different types of templates for press releases. But again, you can download this, you can fill in the local information, and then you can send that to the reporters at your local media outlets. And you can not only send them to the newspapers, but you can send them to radio stations like your local NPR station. You can send it to a TV station, and sometimes the outlet will actually take the press release and run it verbatim on their site. A lot of the smaller outlets might do something like that, but if you're in a medium to larger size market, what would probably happen is that they get the press release, they look at it and they go, that's interesting. And then they contact the person who's on the press release, maybe to set up an interview with your group leader or somebody like that to talk about whatever story it is that you're pitching to them. Like I say, it could be an endorsement from your city. It could be that your local chapter has gone to Washington to lobby members of Congress, or if they're not going to Washington, like we're not doing right now, you could send out a press release about your local volunteers doing Zoom meetings with members of Congress to talk about climate change. You can send a press release about your member of Congress co-sponsoring a bill or something like that. There are a number of different things that you can send out press releases for, but the idea with the press release is to get the media outlets' attention that, hey, you guys are doing something that's newsworthy. and it's worth their while to do a story about it. And hopefully they'll contact you and do a story. So if you do send out a press release and you get a reporter call up and say, hey, I want to talk to you or whoever, it's good to know some interview talking points. And so so what we do is we also have these talking points that are available that you can look at and go over, so that they're sort of in top of mind. Because the thing you don't want to do when you're talking to a reporter, particularly if you're talking on radio or TV, is you don't want to be kind of fumbling around. You want to kind of know, okay, what are the points that I want to get across? And you want to be able to say them, succinctly and clearly when you're talking to a reporter. So we offer these interview talking points for you to look at and sort of have them, in top of mind when you're talking to a reporter. And this is a resource that you'll find on our CCL community resources page. So if you go to the resource page, which is on the next slide here, you'll see the two links. One is for the interview talking points, and the other is for the local press release template. So that's where you can find those two resources. All right, so we've gone over what are the opportunities. We've gone over what are the resources that are available for you to help you get published or on the air in your local media market. So the next thing we want to do is do a little practice exercise. So before we get into actually doing the exercise here, I want to share with you our trade secret for the basic formula for drafting a letter to the editor that in all probability would get selected to run in your newspaper. And so there it is on the left there. Step one, reference the story or a specific part of it. Again, I want to remind you that the newspaper runs letters that usually refer to things that are in the newspaper. They're either things that are in the newspaper or big stories that everybody's talking about. And then after you've referenced that, you want to transition into how it relates to climate change. And then after you've done that, you want to pivot to the solution. And so for a long time, we were talking about the Energy Innovation Act. These days, our solution is, hey, we need to get carbon pricing into the mix of solutions that Congress is going to take up this year. And then there's usually a call to action. Normally, it's for something like getting our representative or our senator to co-sponsor a carbon pricing bill, or in this case, for them to support carbon pricing in the legislation that's going to deal with climate change. And then you would close the letter off, with kind of a creative maybe a turn of phrase or something like that. The device I like to use is what's called closing the circle. And by that I mean when you finish off your letter, you say something that kind of references back to the start of your letter and what you were writing about to begin with. So an example on the right here would be, somebody might say, thank you for Monday's piece about Hurricane Dorian. Scientists tell us that CO2 emissions are warming our waters, and that makes stronger hurricanes. We can reduce those emissions with the Energy Innovation Act. And I'd love to see Representative so-and-so support this in Congress. And then after all, the next Dorian could be right here at home. So that's kind of an example of how you might apply that formula to a letter to the editor. So that's the basic LTE formula. We also have some some key messages. Now, these are these are our messages that that we were using in relation to the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. So you wouldn't necessarily need these currently as we're talking more about carbon pricing in general, but just for the sake of being familiar with these things, our key messages are that the policy is effective. It reduces America's emissions at least 40% within 12 years. It's good for people. The policy will improve health and save lives by reducing air pollution that affects people's health. It's good for the economy. It'll create a couple of million jobs over the next 10 years. Well, at one time it was bipartisan, but currently we don't have any other, we don't have Republicans that are on the bill, but we have Republicans outside of Congress who do support the policy. And if you're talking about the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, it is revenue neutral because it distributes all of the revenue back to households. So those are some key messages. Again, we're taking a little broader look at carbon pricing right now, rather than focusing on one particular policy. Okay, so that brings us to the exercise here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to break you into probably a couple of rooms. I don't know how many folks we have here. Let's see.
4 rooms. 4 rooms.
4 rooms. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we're going to break into to 4 rooms, and so here are the things that are currently in the news that you might be able to write a letter to the editor about. So you have the extreme weather that's going on out there right now, the incredible wildfires out west, the heat waves. What's the temperature in Portland, Tamara?
95. I think it'll be 103 tomorrow, though.
103 tomorrow. And what is the the daytime temperature usually in the summertime in Portland?
Like 88, 85.
88. Yeah. Okay. So it's a little off the charts right now. You could, droughts, the horrific floods that happened with extreme rain events and things like that. So that's one topic that you could write about is, the extreme weather that's being exacerbated by climate change. Another topic that's in the news right now, this week, is the IPCC report on climate change. This is the UN report that basically is a red alert that hey, time's up. We've got to cut emissions starting now, big time. So there's the IPCC report, and then what just happened today is that you have the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill in the Senate today. It still has to go through the House, but that's a bill that actually has some spending in it for climate change, but certainly not enough to get the job done. And we're really kind of looking at the next bill that's going to come up with budget reconciliation to get bigger and better solutions enacted by Congress. And of course, one of those solutions that we'd like to get into that reconciliation bill is a price on carbon. So we're going to break you into these rooms, give you 5 minutes. You can introduce yourselves real quick and talk about which LTE opportunity you plan to write a letter about using the LTE formula. And while you're there with your partners in the breakout room, you can brainstorm a little bit on the points that you might make in a letter to the editors. So
that's perfect, Steve. Just a huge thank you to all of you for being here and sticking it out till the end and the top of the hour. If you have any questions, email steve@citizensclimate.org. Really easy address to remember. If you have any questions that you want to be answered Within a 24-hour period, not to say Steve won't get back to you quickly, but who knows? The forums are a great place to go to ask questions on any topic, really. Community.citizensclimate.org/forum. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Steve, for all your efforts here.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.